So my full name is Neethi Anantalakshmi Venkateshwaran. I identify as female, and I identify as an Indian American.
Have you always felt comfortable in this identity, like labeling yourself in that way, or has it been like figuring it out?
That's been a lifelong journey.
Right.
I feel like when I was really young, I was very happy to proudly call myself an Indian. Because I just grew up surrounded by my culture, and I would go to India often. And as I grew older and of course went to school, realizing that I also had this American identity and trying to figure out which one am I, and realizing that anytime I was in India, even if I did not say anything, just the manner in which I would walk down the street, people would know that I was not Indian.
Right.
With little things, right? Just with our mannerisms. And whenever I'm here, by the color of my skin, I know that people would just assume that I was fresh off the boat, and I have been asked that in high school. And I feel like my issues of identity definitely kind of came about the most when I was in 6th grade, when up until 6th grade, every year for one day out of the school year, my mom would come into school and talk about India and Hinduism. And in 6th grade, my teacher, when I told her, my mom has done this, like, she'll be happy to come in if you would like to, especially because we're studying India this year in history. Right. And to her credit, my teacher said, well, I would love to do this, but how about you speak instead of your mom? So I actually told Mr. Tierman about this during my interview day with him, and he said, what a good teacher. But that was really exciting, because that actually, we had a conversation about religion across the world, essentially, and a lot of my friends spoke about Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and I spoke about Hinduism. It was a really cool thing to see that it was all run by students, and that was really powerful for me. And in 6th grade, I also had a friend who wore her hijab, and she was very proud. And that it was actually in 6th grade that I started wearing my bindi every day. Oh, cool. So up until then, of course, I would wear a bindi for religious events, but it was 6th grade that I started every day, and I've not stopped. And for me, it's just a source of pride for who I am, and it's like makeup, and it's like an accessory. But I do strongly feel like I'm both now, especially considering that I'm married to someone who identifies as white. My identity is very important to me, and coming up with having a soon-to-be biracial baby, like figuring out what do we want to impart to him. So the one thing I will note, though, is I still, to this day, I have memories of growing up and being in India and being called an ABCD, and that term is American-born confused Desi. Desi means Indian. So I just remember being livid, because I know so much more about Indian culture than many Indians living in India. Because what I've seen in India right now is like just this looking to the West, and everyone wants to mock Hollywood. And I'm the one that went to grad school for Sanskrit and religious studies. That was really hard to hear.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So I strongly feel like I have identities now in both, and it's helpful that things are changing in our culture as well. Just with small things like shows like Mindy Project and Aziz Ansari's Master of None, really trying to tackle the experience for many different people of different races in America. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So excuse me, at the time, of course, when you're growing up as a kid, that's all you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't occur to me that I was the only student of color in many of my classes. And because I had a strong Indian community outside of school as well, and we would go to India often. So I had that part of my life, and then I had my school, and they were very different entities.
Right.
So it was very interesting for me kind of working in a high school setting and seeing how much this school impacts our students' social lives as well, right? Like you're all like close friends and you like hang out and do stuff together. And I had friends, but I didn't actively, go out of my way to hang out with them. I really did kind of separate these two lives. And I did always kind of think, kind of speaking to what Aditi talked about in her senior moment, like, I'm Indian here, I'm American here.
Right.
And even realizing when I would hang out with some of my Indian friends, they would make fun of me because whenever we would say certain Indian words, I would pronounce it properly, like the Ramayana versus Ramayana.
Yeah.
And my friends would make fun of me. My Indian friends, like,
for pronouncing it right.
Yeah. So because everyone, right, is trying to navigate how to be comfortable in social situations. So I found that fascinating growing up. And in college, I was exposed to, I began my South Asian Studies training, but still I was at Rochester, so that's not very different demographic from Buffalo, New York.
Right.
And then I moved to Boston and, being more in a college town. And then I moved to Pebble Beach, where I was one of 2 faculty of color at my school that I was teaching at.
Wow.
And just knowing that if I went to the Whole Foods in Monterey, they would know that that's Miss V from Stevenson School.
Yeah.
Because she's the only Indian lady
right.
in this area. And then I came to Oakland, and it has been really interesting for me I feel at home here, and I've gotten so used to seeing the diversity here that when I go back to Buffalo, I am just shocked, and I sometimes have a hard time.
Yeah. I'm wondering, in what ways, like, specifically do you think, like, working in independent school like Head Royce has affected, like, the formation of your identity?
I will say this school in particular has, because I'm pushed to be a good teacher, just that in general.
Right.
But knowing that the mission of the school includes something like diversity right up front and center, that was one of the things that actually spoke to me about the school.
Yeah.
And when I was interviewing, it was powerful that it was another South Asian woman who reached out to me.
Yeah.
Because she was the department chair at the time. And I still remember reading the email, reading something along the lines Ms. Sarkars wrote, it's great to see another South Asian woman in teaching. I think encouraging and teaching teachers about issues of diversity, that has to be front and center in teacher training.
Right.
Teacher Training 101.
Yeah.
And it's different for private schools because not all teachers have the same background in education, right? So, not everyone has had that kind of training. So I think that it's vital for orientations to always tackle topics of diversity, and full faculty meetings to be addressing those topics. Yeah. But here, I've never felt isolated or kind of put on the spot.
Right.
For instance, I was put in charge of the MLK assembly at my previous school in my first year there.
Oh my God. Just because you're a person of color? Just
because I'm a person of color.
Wow, okay.
Which I thought, like, and it was something important and I wanted to do it, but I just don't know if they thought about the ramifications or just what is implied when you approach the one teacher of color to run the MLK assembly.
Yeah.
So really interesting for me in this realm of independent schools because I'm a product of public school education. I did go to an independent school for kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what I needed at that age. I was super shy, and I needed that small, intimate classroom setting. But I still was able to get that in my 1st through 12th grade schooling as well. But so I see the pros and cons to both settings.
Right.
But as a teacher, I've only experienced independent schools.
Okay.
And I will just say that here I've just been really pleased to see the work that's being done. So my first year here, we didn't have as many Indian students. It was my 2nd year so your class year, that there was a heightened number of Indian students, and that's when India Club actually reformed. And what I had learned was there was an India Club even earlier that Ms. Sarkar helped run, and it just always goes with the admissions flows, right? Like who identifies, who wants to continue, so much is dependent on our students, right? Which rightly so, a school is for the students. So I was so excited when we had India Club begin. I've appreciated having that platform because we've been able to have assemblies and this new tradition of Holi. So I do appreciate that. And in the classroom, I really do genuinely appreciate the English and history teachers reaching out when they talk about India in the 9th grade curriculum. So I've been privileged to go guest lecture, in the history and English classes. And I know that my colleagues are trying their best to properly understand facets of Indian culture to then share with their students. Of course, it's always funny, it's what actually sticks, because I have had these conversations, and then I actually sat in on a senior elective this year where I asked a few questions that I had talked about with these 9th graders, just with the typical myths of Hinduism, and they got all of them wrong. And okay. But that's just in general, that's a different issue. But I do feel like I don't have that many gripes about how Indians are portrayed. I do still think that there are stereotypes placed on all of these demographics. So, we often have joint conversations, India Club with Asia Club. So, the whole model minority, and I know, and I've seen a lot of my students of South Asian descent having to kind of deal with, honors versus regular, that whole conundrum, and dealing with what people think that they should be doing. And I do feel like there are other similar stereotypes placed on other demographics at the school.
Right.
I do feel that. I would love to see, so I actually am going to take it a more academic route.
Okay.
I would actually like to see more interdisciplinary work happening in the classrooms. And I feel like that will allow for more open dialogue. And if you're able to also see the diversity in our subject matters, it kills me that math it's not a cold science.
Right.
And so for me, with someone who's so interested in issues of diversity, I just feel like people just keep them as separate, and I want to show that they can be together. And if we could change that, I would love to see that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect.